Hello everyone, I'm GG and welcome back to Music Forever, where today I'm going to be reviewing the newest album from Sum 41, Order in Decline. Overall, I would say I'm a Sum 41 fan. I like the majority of the material that they've put out in the past to some extent. However, I would say that there's very few albums from them that I would really consider to be great that they put out in the past. Plenty of albums I think are very close to being great, but rarely do I think they ever get over that hurdle to actually being great. So I came into this new album of theirs expecting a solid release pretty much. I thought that their last album, 13 Voices, their comeback record of sorts, was a pretty solid project. I was expecting more of the same from this one. And overall, I do have to say that this is a good album. In fact, I'd go as far as to say that this is a pretty great album from Sum 41. In fact, I would even go as far as to say that this is one of the band's best albums to date. I know a lot of people might not expect Sum 41 to be releasing a fantastic album this late into their career, but I honestly think that they pull it off here on this thing, primarily due to the focus that's present here on this project and a lot of the energy that the band brings to the table on this thing. I feel like this project is as focused as it is in part due to the lyrics on this thing revolving around one topic really for the most part, that being the current political and social environment, particularly as a result of President Trump. And Sum 41 make it pretty clear on this project that they are not fans of Trump at all. Even without dropping his name once on this thing, it's pretty clear who they're talking about. And considering that I'm not a fan of Trump in the slightest, I can get behind a lot of what the band is saying here on this project. And despite the fact that a lot of the music that's been made recently that's been anti-Trump has been kind of underwhelming, just due to the market for this kind of music being a bit oversaturated, I think Sum 41 are able to pull it off here on this project, in part due to a lot of the energy that they also happen to bring to the table on Order in Decline. I wouldn't necessarily say that the band is bringing to the table any super new ideas when it comes to this current political climate that we're talking about here in relation to this project, and while I typically wouldn't consider that to be a good thing, I think that this album chooses to be more of a cathartic experience than it does one that brings to the table new problems and solutions and things of that sort. I feel like the lyrics on this project, at least the ones that are politically charged, are able to pull together the frustration and the anger that a lot of Americans currently feel into a nice little package that's a very cathartic listening experience, which I find to be kind of funny because Sum 41 are a Canadian band, but who would think that a Canadian band would make a really cathartic listening experience for an American audience, but it works out nicely. I can't really complain about it. On a lot of these politically charged tracks on the album, Sum 41 bring the anger, not just with the vocal deliveries on these tracks, but also with the instrumentation that they provide for these songs as well. When it comes to the sound of this thing, this is definitely one of the heaviest albums Sum 41 has released so far. And the band has always dabbled in some heavier sounds on occasion, especially on albums like Chuck, for example, which is probably the closest relative to this album if we're speaking about Sum 41 albums being similar, because both albums are pretty politically charged and both have a heavy sound to them, but I feel like this new album here is even heavier and more focused than what Chuck was. All of these very aggressive, politically charged songs that pop up on this thing are backed with some really pummeling, thick-sounding guitar parts and bass work. You have some nice drums as well that provide a nice backbone to things too. And thrown into a lot of these tracks, you also have some frantic, crazy guitar solos as well that also embody a lot of rage and just sound fantastic. Now, while the band is certainly playing around with some heavier sounds on this thing, they never completely departure from the core elements that make Sum 41 Sum 41. For example, you still have a lot of really catchy sing-along choruses on this thing too. However, as you might expect, a lot of them are a lot darker and angrier in tone than, say, a track like In Too Deep, to name a popular one from this band. Particularly tracks like Out for Blood, Turning Away, 45 A Matter of Time, A Death in the Family have some of the best hook work on this entire project. I do want to make it clear at this point, though, that this album isn't rage from start to finish. There are some moments thrown into the mix of this thing that sound a bit different, bring some different lyrical topics to the table, things of that sort, and I think that these are some of the more interesting moments on this project as well. The track Never There is one of the best in the track listing, featuring lyrics talking about Derek Whibley, lead singer of the band, addressing his father and their lack of a relationship, considering he never grew up with his father in his life and still does not have his father in his life. Essentially, it's a pretty touching track that, addresses this kind of odd relationship that the two have. I think as far as ballad tracks go that the band has written, this is arguably the best in my opinion, just for how unique lyrically it is. And even the instrumental to this thing, which I wasn't as big a fan of when I first heard this as a single, has grown on me a lot for, the purpose it serves in the overall album itself in terms of, changing things up and keeping things fresh. The closing track to this thing, Catching Fire, is the other song on this album that I think changes things up a bit more. Instead of being this angry, aggressive, straightforward song, it's a bit slower, a bit more atmospheric, and lyrically, it once again goes in a very different direction than the rest of this project, kind of talking about being left behind after someone has passed away, and the complicated feelings that come as a result of this. Once again, I think the lyrics on this track are really great, and the tonal shift in sound here I think works nicely, especially as a closer track. Overall, I do wish that there were maybe a couple of other songs in the album that maybe had a bit of a different sound compared to the core vibe that they were going for with this project. However, given how short and to the point this project is overall, this project never really does get to the point where it starts to feel repetitive or boring, even though a lot of the songs on this thing stylistically run pretty similar. Overall, I enjoyed Order and Decline a little bit more than I was expecting. I expected to like this album coming into it, considering I liked all the teaser tracks from it to some extent. However, if you saw my reviews of those initial teaser tracks, you know that with the exception of Never There, I thought that they were just decent. But hearing all of this put together in the context of a full album, I think it makes for a lot more of an enjoyable, complete experience than it does just individual tracks. The way that the band just feels really focused here on this project on a particular piece of lyrical subject matter, the way that the sound of this thing also feels really focused, energized, and angry too, helps pull everything together into this nice, tight, cohesive package. It just seems like every aspect of the band has come into sync here on this project to make arguably the band's most cohesive and to-the-point project to date. And overall, I really enjoyed this thing, if you couldn't already tell. It's definitely an album that I would recommend to fans of the band, and definitely an album I would recommend to fans of pop-punk, melodic hardcore music, just anyone out there looking for something aggressive and angry and to the point. This is definitely an album that you should have on your radar if that's the case. So overall, I thought this was a pretty great project from Sum 41, but that is just my own personal opinion. If you happen to disagree for one reason or another, that's perfectly fine. In fact, feel free to leave your own thoughts on this album in the comment section down below. And while you're down there, make sure you also leave a like on the video and subscribe to the channel for more music-related content, things like album reviews, track reviews, things of that sort. So if you enjoy that kind of content, make sure you subscribe. Thank you for watching once again, and stay golden.